how do you reduce rumination with OCD? So if you have OCD, you know that just about any theme that OCD picks, rumination is one of the most common mental compulsions that comes with it. If you're not familiar with what it looks like, rumination can take a lot of forms, but generally it's kind of anything that falls under the umbrella of mentally trying to logic our way out of these intrusive thoughts. So for example, I may be ruminating and trying to come up with every possible hypothetical of my intrusive thought happening and coming up with a plan for what I would try to do about it. Another form of rumination would be where I'm trying to answer a question. So if I'm trying to be more sure, is this intrusive thought possible? Is it going to happen? And I'm kind of going through all the facts I know, all the Rolodex of research to see, do I actually have this health problem? Can I mentally figure it out? Obviously, since this is a mental compulsion, it's pretty invisible. You can be ruminating on intrusive thoughts for hours a day without anyone seeing it. It's why it can be one of the trickiest compulsions to actually combat. It's so invisible and it's also so fast, right? In the time it takes you to physically do one OCD ritual, you may have been able to ruminate about a thought many, many times over. So OCD will almost always favor it, especially because you can do it anywhere. So even at work where I can't physically be washing my hands or checking certain things, or researching, I might be able to ruminate and just be like obsessing about these thoughts over and over again. The difference between obsessing, which would be just experiencing intrusive thoughts, and ruminating, which is a compulsion, obsessing is really just an intrusive thought kind of coming into your head, right? It's usually in the form of a what if, right? Like, what if this happens? What if I start to do this? What if someone else does XYZ? What if they find out XYZ? So it's the intrusive thought itself. Rumination is anything you are kind of doing in an attempt to actually answer the what if, in an attempt to actually fix, solve, resolve, or understand the intrusive thought more. So if I have an intrusive thought of what if I actually want to harm my kids, ruminating would actually look like, okay, well, how likely is that, Megan? That doesn't really seem like the kind of character you have. Did you ever really do that before? How likely is it that someone would actually act on that? Here's kind of the stats, about people harming their kids, and it's mostly men who do it, so maybe you're not going to. But the intrusive thought itself was more the question, do you really want to harm your kids or not? What if you do? Right? So that's kind of the difference, right? Is the intrusive thought can be there, but the rumination is almost what we're trying to figure out about that intrusive thought. It's everything, all the attention we're mentally paying it after it shows up in our head. So one, just the awareness to differentiate, right? That, hey, yes, intrusive thoughts can enter my head, but at what point am I actually starting to ruminate about it, right? At what point does it change from just having an intrusive thought to now I'm compulsively thinking about it? That can already help a little bit, but how you can continue to break out of the cycle of ruminating, the biggest strategy I work with when I work with my patients is to kind of question the whole concept. So again, OCD is a doubting disorder. It constantly wants to be more sure, more certain. It has to be 110% certain for me to be okay with this, which is not possible. So when you're ruminating, it's always an attempt to understand, an attempt to be a little bit more sure that it will happen or it won't. OCD actually doesn't care. Sometimes it will go both ways, but the fear is that it doesn't want to stay in the unknown, the in-between, the maybe I will, maybe I won't, I can't be sure. So what I encourage people is that when you get that urge to ruminate, to kind of lean the opposite way, right? When OCD is saying let's think about that. How likely is it? What do you think are the chances? What are the steps you would have taken if you actually wanted to do that? We lean into the opposite direction of, actually, I really don't know. I can't be fully sure if I actually want to do that. Did I do that? Actually, you know what? I can be pretty sure, but I can't be certain because that happened a little bit ago and maybe my memory is not perfect. So I actually don't fully know. I will never fully know if my intrusive thought is, what if my sexual orientation is actually different than what I think it is and I have to figure that out now. Oh, she's going to want me to ruminate on how true does that feel? Does that match everything you've ever experienced? And I'm going to lean against that with, well, actually, I can't be fully sure, right? I'm not going to replay those thoughts. I'm not going to try to get more information because I know I can't ever be fully certain by thinking about it more. So it's always just kind of redirecting. And when you first start doing this, it actually takes a lot of redirecting because it's not easy. So you may notice I'm going from intrusive thought and question to ruminating and redirecting myself of like, nope, we're not answering that question. Nope, we're not figuring that out. No, I'm not strategizing about how I'm going to handle that. I just can't be sure. You may notice you're doing that a lot. Now, the longer you sit with it, the easier that will get. You will suddenly notice, okay, I don't have to redirect as much. I'm starting to get to a point of acceptance that I cannot be fully sure. The acceptance is what we're looking for. Once you really reach that acceptance point and give it some time, the distress will really go down. And eventually, this intrusive thought, as you practice this time and time again, will actually fade. So it becomes habituated or desensitized, and it no longer really shows up with nearly as much frequency. So that's kind of the core principle of ERP, but I just wanted to get in there and really describe how we would do this because I know the mental compulsions are kind of the hardest. They're the hardest to notice, they're the hardest to build awareness of, and they're the hardest to fight because they are so fast and so easy to do. So it's really important that you can understand the difference between your intrusive thought and a compulsion, even the mental ones like rumination, and then to learn to resist it. So almost to lean into the opposite, the uncertainty and the unknown. It's not comfortable. You will notice that doing that redirect brings up more discomfort. So part of ERP is learning to sit through that just uncomfortable feeling, that bodily distress, and waiting it out. It's not jumping into another compulsion, it's waiting out that process until it fades on its own. So if you need more help, I have plenty of other ERP videos that you could use if you've tried doing self-guided ERP and you're feeling a bit stuck. I am a licensed therapist in several different states as well as an worldwide OCD coach, so feel free to reach out if you need a little bit more help trying to get OCD under control.